Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today I have a list for you, and that's kind of unusual for this YouTube channel in so much as I don't really like making definitive lists of my favourite this or the best that, this kind of thing. I mean, we have done a sort of desert island games, games that I would take with me if I was stranded somewhere kind of list. I think in no particular order that one was, but if you ask me, say, what my favourite band is at the bar or something, or walking along, I'm probably going to give you several answers, and they'll change more or less every day, and they'll cover quite a range of genres. I'm not really a definitive list person, but this list occurred to me a few days ago, and I posted an unelaborated version on the social medias, a list without the reasons why that list existed, and asked people, what do you think this is about? What do you think this list is conveying? And no one got the answer, interestingly. But by now, obviously, you've seen what the answer is. The answer is in the video title. It is a series of computer games that have what could be described as gimmicks in their mode of control that pull me into the game. They immerse me in that game. I'm a sucker for game world building, like if it's exploring or depth of story or characters or art design, this kind of thing. But also if the controllers or the console itself has a gameplay element to it that just physically ties me to the experience, normally I will be in love with that experience. I'm a sucker for immersion in these games, and that's what the list is all about. And the first game on the list is a game that I'm not a huge fan of. I'm a huge fan of the series. The Legend of Zelda series, of course, is divine, but this game didn't strike me very favourably, and that is Phantom Hourglass on the DS. It's a game that's padded out with a needlessly difficult hub experience, which I'm sure they thought would be almost like a mini game in itself, having to remember the sequence of things you have to do to get further and further down in this dungeon, but before you die of essentially poison gas effects. It was a bad idea, but the control scheme in that game was wonderful. They reinvigorated Navi, or a Navi-like fairy for a start, using the touchscreen and the stylus as the fairy, just as the fairy in Ocarina of Time, and it is Ocarina, not Ocarina, Ocarina of Time, had been used to sort of to explain the Z targeting. So when Link was talking to someone, or when Link was focusing on an enemy, the fairy went there and changed colour, blue, green, yellow, this kind of thing. So they used that for the touchpad, and that was kind of pleasing, and also how you moved him around was with, basically following the fairy. But the thing that really hit me in that game was a very particular moment when you are encouraged to blow into the microphone in order to get some windmills going on, was it the Isle of Gust, I think. So you go, and suddenly things are moving on the screen, and you can also blow out candles in the game as well. There's an entrance to a fire temple or a fire dungeon where you have to blow out the candles using the microphone. And when people emulate this game on PC, they have to import a white noise file to sort of to trick the program into thinking that the candle has been blown, or the microphone has been blown. But I thought it was wonderful. I'd never experienced that before, or since, in fact. This moment of, it just says, it needs a gust of wind, and you're like, well, huh? And then I think you're prompted to blow, but even then you're sort of okay, and then it happens. It's magnificent. You feel as though you're well, you feel kind of godlike, a little bit like my first experience with Zelda on the Game Boy with Link's Awakening was just having this little world in a portable machine that I adored. In this instance, it's a world in a portable machine that I could physically interact with. And then it got even more interesting when there's a requirement to transfer stamps onto your map in the game. So you'll have like a stamp on a wall, and you have to stamp it onto your map. And in order to do that, you have to fold the DS shut, the clamshell shut, and then open it up again. And when you close it, normally it puts the game on hiatus. But clearly they programmed it so that it wouldn't just shut down the machine, and rather it transferred the stamp from one screen to the other by folding the clamshell. Phantom Hourglass is not a great game. At some point I'll try and complete it, because I also want to play is it Spirit Tracks, the sort of the successor to it on the DS. But it had wonderful control schemes, a wonderful set of what could be described as gimmicks that pulled you into the experience, and I really appreciated it. Next we come to a game that I've been really enjoying. I've been more or less obsessing over this game for the past couple of weeks, and that is Days Gone on the PlayStation 4. It got terrible reviews from some of the big reviewers, but since then has seen a bit of a renaissance amongst players and player scores. In fact, just now in the post, the Steelbook arrived that I ordered off eBay with the soundtrack, and also some patches that I might put on a bag or something. So I'm fully on board with Days Gone. But in this particular game, you might think, well, there's not really much there. You know, it's going to be a straightforward sticks and buttons control scheme, and for the most part it is. There's a couple of interesting things in terms of the way that you use the menu. It's the first PlayStation game I've come across where you don't have to push the touchpad, click it to get the menu up. You just swipe. So you swipe right to get to the missions, I think the storyline. You swipe up to go to the map, and left to the inventory. I can't remember what the scheme is, but I like that. I appreciate that as an interesting little flourish. But the particular moment I'm talking about is a mission where you're trying to restart a turbine, a water, like a dam, electric dam generator, a power station, with obviously a turbine that's powered by water flowing through it. And you're with Ricky, one of the other sort of the NPC characters in the game. And she's just dived into the lake to unblock the through flow of water, and she asks you to go and check on the turbine, and you promptly do. Down the steps towards the turbine, and it asks you to touch the turbine. So Deke, the protagonist, reaches out, touches the turbine, and it's a simple thing, but he can feel the vibrations through the controller. And so you, as Deke, are feeling confirmation that the turbine is working again, and that electricity is now flowing throughout the map. It's subtle, but it's a very nice little use of vibrations, because in other instances it might be that you've been hit by a gunshot or something, or that you've fallen off your bike, or other things that make the controller react and respond. But this is a very conscious moment. I mean, so much as you kind of start, ever since the days of the N64, Rumble, with the Rumble Pack, rumbling has become more and more expected in games, and it kind of fades into the background. You kind of don't notice it really, which is why I'm interested in what the haptic feedback on the new PlayStation 5 controllers might be like in the near future. Not that I'll be getting one in the near future, but you know what I mean. I mean, I'm intrigued by that. But in this instance, it's drawing your attention for story purposes to a moment in the world where you have to feel the vibration to confirm that something is happening, and sure enough, you can feel it through the controller. It was a nice little moment, and one that I appreciated. Now we come to the Wii, and a console that's so full of possibilities. I've talked about this previously. I think I did a video essentially explaining how the Wii was a missed opportunity in so many so many ways, in terms of the control scheme and how people didn't fully make the best use of its tracking capabilities, or the microphone in the Wiimote, and the fact that the nunchuck had some sensors in it. Third-party developers, I think, did the Wii dirty, as they say. But one of the launch titles, Red Steel, absolutely stands out in my mind as an example of I think Ubisoft, actually, I think a third-party developer thinking about the console and what it can do. It wasn't such a surprise. It was a delight, but it wasn't such a surprise to see similar things in WarioWare Smooth Moves, for example, where you're using the controller in various ways, which are mimicking what's happening on the screen. And that was again, potentially you could describe it as being gimmicky, but it brings you into the moment and into the game in a way that it was very accessible. If nothing else, it was accessible to all age groups, and the Wii famously sold really, really well throughout the generations, because it was an accessible and one-to-one possibility in terms of the ability to pump maybe a balloon up, or put someone's false teeth in, this kind of thing. But the Red Steel has a moment in it where, despite all of the run and gun gameplay, I very much appreciated as a launch title this light gun-like experience with swords and guns. It was great. It wasn't perfect. There were better shooters on the Wii, in fact, and actually the sequel, Red Steel 2, is superior in every way. And actually, I really need to complete that game because it's a great game. But this moment comes at the beginning of a level. I think level 7 in the game. I think it's called Taking Out the Trash or something, where you start on the shoreline. And I remember this so vividly. I was sitting in, at the time I was a student, and I was sitting in our shared living room looking up at the screen, and suddenly in my hand the Wiimote starts ringing like a phone. Ring! Okay, and I sort of put it up to my ear, and then I hear in my ear a phone conversation unfolding, essentially the mission brief that I'm getting for what I'm about to do. And that was thrilling. It was truly thrilling to have someone on the phone, or on the Wiimote rather, telling me what was about to happen next. Now, this is something actually that recently I've been experiencing, actually, funnily enough, just going back a step, on Days Gone, where you can pick up audio recorders, people's memos and this kind of thing, and they'll play through the controller. So it's become more and more commonplace to have a controller with speakers in it. But this was a third-party developer, taking advantage of this and really thinking about, this could be like a phone. This could be the beginning of the mission. And again, it just pulled me into the experience. It anchored me in that moment, and I'll never forget it. The Wii, it was such an interesting console, and things like the sound through the Wiimote. I've talked about this before, but you could have done something where you had to put the Wiimote to your ear and point it at the screen and listen out for things, maybe in the bushes, or if you were doing a Spec Ops mission or something, you could sort of try and listen in on someone in a building. They never did it. It never happened. But if I was designing a Wii game, I would start with the question, what can we do with this range of control and these different features in the controller? I loved it. I really did. We return now to the PlayStation 4 and Uncharted 4, the final, or so far final, Nathan Drake game, and a moment that's hinted at in, I think, earlier on in the game, but they really hammer home in the latter stages in the level, Avery's Descent. And slight spoilers if you haven't played the game, but a character called Avery has clearly gone insane, and you're following a pathway laid out by this pirate. And at one point, Drake's torch starts to fail a little bit. It sort of goes a bit dark and then comes back again, and then it goes dark and then doesn't come back again. And your response is one of slight panic because you're surrounded by explosive mummies, there's traps all over the place. You're like, what the heck am I going to do? And then suddenly on screen there's a prompt to just tap the controller, as though Nathan is tapping the bottom of his torch to get the batteries to just give me a little bit more power. We've all done it. I've definitely done it with TV remotes, and I used to do it with my CD player or whatever when I was walking around as a teenager. Just a little, come on, just a little bit more, and you'd roll the batteries maybe, and this kind of thing. And it feels quite natural. And then the torch comes back on, and you're like, whew, and you carry on. And then eventually the torch dies again, and you're like, come on, just come on. And again, it feels as though you're there. It is precisely one of the best uses of, again, a very simple concept. This isn't as specifically weird as the Wii control scheme is. It's a fairly standard controller, but with some motion, gyroscopes presumably inside this kind of thing to detect motion, and it can tell you're come on, and that physical act just grounds you. It pulls you into the game, and again, it's all about the immersion. Eventually, another light source is found, and we continue, but there's a slight panic when it's not working. Come on, because you're in danger and you're in the dark, and at that point you're fairly far into the adventure, and you know that this is dangerous to be here without any light. Brilliant. And again, another gimmicky moment that just pulled you into the game. Finally, we come to a fairly old game at this point, the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. It's been infamously ported to almost every console on Earth. I'm pretty sure you can get a Game & Watch now that plays Skyrim. I'd be amazed if by next week my coffee cup come and play Skyrim. But in all seriousness, a very particular version of the game, not the original version that I played on the Xbox 360, not the enhanced graphical version that's now available on current gen consoles, but actually the Switch version. The version that I was really interested to get, because the prospect of being able to play Skyrim portably is something that they initially sold the Switch with right at the beginning. It was a very exciting idea, and I needed to experience this. But little did I know, one of my favourite features of the game is not that it's portable, and it's not even the fact that I get to import Zelda paraphernalia into the game, the Master Sword and the Hylian Shield, or the motion controls that the Switch allow for swinging the sword or for blocking with a punch of your hand. Although those things are superb, but it's actually something else that the Joy-Con make possible, something quite subtle, because of the so-called HD rumble that the console has. Lockpicking has been completely changed, and in my opinion improved, through the tactile experience that you get on the Switch version of the game. The fact that you can sort of move very slowly through the arc of the pin in the lock until you feel the little movement in your hands that is different from the others. Famously, the Joy-Con have the ability to distinguish between 1, 2 or 3 ice cubes in a glass, supposedly, and in this instance you really can feel, even on the hardest of locks, where the biting point might be. You get a sense of actually lockpicking, or those sort of little moments, those little telltale things that the lockpicker that you feel when you're lockpicking, which I have a couple of times actually. You get that through the Joy-Con, and so actually I've managed to pick really masterful locks at fairly low level by feeling my way, by really engaging with what I'm doing with my hands, just as the character is in the game. It's fantastic, and it was a real surprise. I'd sort of heard, it was one of those things that I sort of told myself, this is why you can justify buying this game again, is that I'd heard that lockpicking was improved, but the experience of lockpicking was just magnified, it was augmented beyond belief because of that tactile experience, because now I feel what I'm doing. I'm not just sort of watching and trying desperately not to break the pick as it sort of starts to quiver because you got it in the wrong position. It was a delight, and it continues to be tremendous fun when I'm playing on my Switch. So there you have it, a list of 5 games that are augmented, elevated by unusual control schemes, personality quirks of the platforms that they find themselves on, that allow you to interact with these digital worlds, environments, artifacts and people in ways that just are delightful, and just add a little something to the experience, just to surround you with that story. I'm always excited when I come across this sort of thing, and I'm sure there are many more, so please do comment below if you have some particular favourites of your own. And surely this is only going to improve, as I said earlier, you know, with the PlayStation 5 controllers and haptic feedback, and obviously in VR. You know, we've seen bits of this in Half-Life Alyx, for example, the way that haptics and grabbing artifacts, and it's playing with, I suppose, how people live in the real world, and how we can be delighted by the smallest of things in a computer game when it just reminds us of a human truth, I suppose, of being in the moment and being able to do something that we can relate to. It's I think it continues to be one of the central reasons I enjoy computer games. And I've talked about this in the past. You know, I used to be really excited by reflections in games. You know, if I saw my avatar's reflection in a mirror, for example, I was always impressed by that. Or just destructible items in the environment, and so on and so forth. And that's only improving with tighter controls and more interesting little mechanisms like gyroscopes and haptics, and you know, I remember on the GameCube having the ability to have a sort of an analog and a click on the controller just added a little something to the experience. And it's those little somethings that are sprinkled onto even the most familiar of games like Skyrim that can just bring a smile. And I wanted to share that with you today. So thank you for watching. And as ever, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.